Here's a smoking hot reality check for everyone going gaga over the Fadden By-election. The result means nothing. I've seen plenty of steaming takes both in the news and online, ranging from the Labor honeymoon being over to a glowing endorsement for Spud's leadership all the way through to Fadden being the death knell for the Greens. All those takes, in my humble opinion, belong in the same place. The bin! Let's start with some cold, emotionless facts. The division of Fadden saw its first federal election in 1977. Since then, the seat has been held by the Liberal Party, with the exception of roughly 1 year when it was briefly held by Labor in 1983, following the double dissolution election. It's the sort of electorate that political journos would probably refer to as a Liberal stronghold. In two-party terms, it's been in the 60-40 range for around 30 years. Basically, no one in their right mind would have predicted anything but a blue team win. That's why some of the reaction around the Fadden result is so bizarre. It's also why I was so surprised to read reports that the Liberal Party had splashed $600,000 on the Fadden campaign, a ridiculous amount given how safe the seat is. By comparison, Labor is reported to have spent $30,000. And I mean, ask yourself, why would Labor or any of the minor parties for that matter bother spending a heap of cash on a race they couldn't win? It wouldn't make sense, would it? So no, the Fadden result doesn't signal a massive victory for Spud. All it tells us is that the Libs spent significantly more capital on a seat that they were never going to lose to make sure they gained a couple of percent, got a pirate on board and saved their dear leaders blushes. But what about the Greens? The Housing Australia Future Fund has to have been one of the big reasons why the Greens vote crashed, right? I mean, nah.
That's highly bloody unlikely.
For starters, Fadden has never been a big Greens electorate. As we've established, it's very, very blue. Here are a couple of other facts. In the 2022 federal election, 7 candidates ran in Fadden. In the 2023 by-election, that number blew out to 13. Obviously, more options spreads out where the votes go a little more, especially to minor parties. In 2022, the Greens were the only real progressive party that stumped up a candidate. In 2023, they had some progressive competition, including from the Legalised Cannabis Party. In 2022, the Greens polled 11,353 votes. In 2023, they've polled 5,159, and the Legalised Cannabis Party have polled 6,102 votes. Add those two together and you've got, wait for it, 11,261, so pretty much the same as what the Greens polled alone in 2022. It's important to note that 2022 was the best result for the Greens in Fadden since they've been running there, and perhaps it's their 2022 result that encouraged other minor progressive parties to run in the 23 by-election. So if you're wondering why the Greens vote dropped in 2023, you don't need to look too far. You don't need to pop on your HAFF branded tinfoil hat either. The answer is more likely that the relative success of the Greens in Fadden in 2022 opened the door for a bunch of other progressive parties to run in 2023. These parties then just took votes off one another. Or look at it another way, if you think the Greens' vote dropped in Fadden because the electorate was punishing them for not passing a piss-weak bill put forward by the government, why didn't the Labor vote increase? I mean, if anything, there was a swing away from Labor, and there was a definite swing toward the Liberal Party. To think that the result for the Greens in Fadden is a reflection on the stance they've taken toward the HAFF is a bizarre Sky News level take. It's just weird to suggest that the Greens have fallen off a cliff, especially given that in the most recent news poll they've actually gained a point whilst Labor have dropped 2. Anecdotally at least, concern and dare I say awareness of the HAFF in Fadden seem to be incredibly low. It's hard to see it being a major issue for those in the Canal estates, if I'm going to be brutally honest. And I mean, then there's this.
Remember, this is all happening because of the sudden resignation of former Coalition Minister Stuart Robert. I remember I was sent out to do some vox pops in Fadden the day that he announced his resignation, to speak to voters in the area to see what they made of his decision to stand down. And funnily enough, I had to speak to about 10 or 15 locals before I actually found someone who had heard of Stuart Robert, and that's saying something.
Ouch.
If the electorate is so disengaged to the point that they don't know who their member is, it's hard to see them caring about the HAFF at all. Speaking of disengaged, the lead up to the by-election saw such levels of voter apathy that the Electoral Commission issued a media release prior expressing concern that there would be a low voter turnout for the electorate. Well, history proved them right. As of Monday evening, voter turnout was just a touch over 2/3. In other words, over 30% of eligible voters in the electorate just didn't bother to vote. So what does the Fadden result mean for Australian politics? Absolutely nothing. The result that was expected was the result that was returned.
I almost forgot.
Is this relevant?
Yes.
Time doesn't mean anything when you're about to be, have water lapping at your ears.